Hello, everybody. This is Henry Schneider with the Business Performance Podcast, and today it's my pleasure to speak with both Ralph Vasami and Charlie Mularski of Universal Weather and Aviation. Ralph is the CEO, and he's had an extremely long career with the company, starting as an intern at age 17 and working his way up to be CEO. He's also on the advisory board of several things in Houston, the Texas Citizens Bank, Vistage International, and Wise Services. And Charlie is the executive VP for International, where he deals with the business around the world. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you, Henry.
Okay.
Thanks, Henry.
Sure. So to begin with, I guess what I'd like for you to do, since most people don't know what Universal Weather and Aviation is about, is if you could describe the company briefly, the types of products and services you provide, who your customers are, and just kind of give us a round picture of what goes on with the company.
Sure. Okay. And Charlie can weigh in where he sees fit. Basically, our target audience are owners and operators of corporate and business aircraft. We do not do any work with commercial airlines. So it's corporations that own these airplanes, or high net worth individuals or government entities. And what we provide as far as products and services overall is global meteorology services along their flight plan routes. So if they're operating a flight out of Houston and headed to London, we do all their weather and their flight plans along the route. We set up their ground handling when they land in London, which is people that would come and meet the airplane, marshal it in, and make sure the passengers and crew make it through customs and immigration. We provide them then with ground transportation services to and from their meeting or hotels. We arrange for credit for their fuel, aircraft cleaning, lavatory services, ground transportation, catering of the airplane. We do the whole 9 yards.
Oh, that's very complex set of offerings.
It is. And the most value that we provide is that, unlike the airlines, with corporate airplanes, the passengers can dictate the schedules. So they can change their mind and originally say they want to leave at 10 a.m. and now they're delayed for some reason and they want to leave at 12, which then would require us to make all the changes over in London to make sure that all those logistics were available 2 hours later. Mm-hmm. And the customers change their mind constantly and change their schedules all the time.
Well, it sounds like in that case, too, you have to redo all the weather, too, as well, because the weather.
That's correct.
So what's the importance of the quality of what you deliver to your clients?
Charlie, you want that one?
Yeah, definitely. I think the importance of what we deliver, and you heard Ralph saying how complex the logistics are for organizing a trip or a mission for business aviation. I think the important is if we fail to deliver along the logistics flow, the risk is not, someone is just not getting what they wanted. The risk is failing on a big transaction or a big mission for a corporation going somewhere for a meeting. And because about, I would say 59% of the companies operating business jets are small to medium-sized companies. I mean, these are important transactions happening worldwide. So we fail, global commerce, transactions, IPOs are at risk. So the mission is a stake, and for us, failing is not an option. And I think that's the biggest thing. The implications could be massive if someone cannot make it to the mission or the meeting they have planned for.
Sure.
And so many moving parts, and that's where our teams in Houston and worldwide have to attach their eyes to a strict process and really be on the watch for variations and fix them as they come. Big challenges at stake. And I think that's the the biggest downfall of failing. And I think, Ralph, you will agree that some of these, a small failure on getting a permit for the aircraft to land on time, that could be, if we don't do it right, that could be the end of the relationship with the customer forever. So it's a big risk.
Yeah. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions about quality and performance that your customers face?
The biggest misconceptions, I think, from the customer's point of view, the passengers especially don't understand the complexity behind these missions that Charlie mentioned. They get on an airplane and expect everything to work, okay? And it's up to us and the crew members. We don't deal with the passengers every day. We deal with the pilots and the schedulers and dispatchers. And so the big misconception, especially from the end customer, which is the passenger, is that I want to go when I want to go because I've got this meeting or whatever, and they don't understand all the nuances, the regulatory environments from that country by country that could affect how you operate in and around their airspace or landing in their countries. And we have to figure all that out with the crew in order to advise the passengers on what is, what's capable or not capable, so that they can then set their schedules and meetings around that. And it varies big time country to country.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what type of feedback do you get then from the passengers?
Well, it varies. I mean, sometimes none. Okay, that they don't. That's the way it's supposed to work. They don't even know who we are, to be honest.
Okay.
The crews will always give us feedback. Okay, and the feedback will vary depending on how good our services were or weren't. But I'll tell you one thing, Henry, that might be important to know. It's not all about business trips and meetings. We've had feedback from crew members that told our people that if it wasn't for the job you guys did working with us, we wouldn't have been able to get as many people out of Puerto Rico as we did on an evac mission when they got hit by that hurricane a few years ago. Yeah. And we were also, they were very complimentary on us because we also pulled off the mission to Thailand when those kids were trapped in a mine.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. Yeah, and we have emails and stories sent by the crews that said, you guys really helped us get down there in a timely manner, and we were able to help get those kids out of the country with medical attention and everything that they needed.
Well, that's
those are the missions that Charlie and I and the rest of our employees love to be part of.
So, did you get involved with the Bahamas and the aftermath of Dorian?
That one was so recent. I'm not sure myself if we've done any relief flights down there. I wouldn't be surprised if we did, but I have not heard anything specific yet on Dorian, unless you did, Charlie.
No, I haven't heard, but I think that the conditions for that are different. So close to the Florida coast that in the Bahamas is required to have smaller planes coming in and go and out. So this is it's a different size of airplanes and type of logistics going in and out of Florida. So like piston engine and twin engines rather than big jets coming and going. But definitely we'll hear something because it's not over yet. So there's a lot more help being delivered as we speak. So I'm sure we'll have a story or two.
Yeah, and I think they have to clean up the runways so you can actually land in there too. So.
Oh, sure.
So what's the biggest challenge that you face as a company with internal business performance?
I guess the way I would answer it, and Charlie can weigh in, some of the biggest challenges is the ever changing and the fluidity in the regulatory environment around the world. And again, there's so many nuances by country that it's a monumental effort at times to keep up with those changes. and they could change on a dime when we're trying to trip plan, an important mission for a customer. So, it's sort of like Charlie said in the beginning, you really got to keep your eyes open and listen and be on top of this. You can't take anything for granted. There was a book written, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. That book isn't allowed at Universal. We have to sweat the small stuff every day, because it's one little thing that could change on a dime. And if we're not on top of it, it could affect the mission. And, that would be my answer. Charlie, do you have something to add?
Well, I think tying to that, the complexity and because you gotta be paying attention to every detail, the knowledge is built within the employees, and that is hard to replicate. It's hard to build, in a swift manner. So the business has extreme challenges on scaling. Mm-hmm. So for us to scale up 20% with the same level of quality, we have to go and have experienced people, train them, and give them enough experience over years to be able to deliver and be able to watch for every single detail. So scaling, it's the knowledge built over time, and I would say that the biggest challenge in the future is to how to manage all that and use the help of machine learning as part of the tools that we have in our toolbox to help our people make decisions and not have to rely so much on 25 years of experience.
So what are some of the fears about this challenge or these challenges?
The biggest fear about it?
Go ahead.
I guess what I'd say about the fears is just, there's a lot of tacit knowledge with our people, and it's very tough to take it from their heads and into some kind of an asset that everybody can use. And so, my biggest fear sometimes is losing tenured people that walk out with so much knowledge and information and, ways around strict processes perhaps to get things done,
Sure.
And a lot of that value could walk away quick unless we keep the employee engaged in what we're doing. I mean, that's one of my biggest fears as far as the quality of the services.
Yeah. And when you think about it, that happens every single day when people go home. They take that knowledge with them. And so being able to capture that is what you're saying is the biggest challenge. So you can.
Yeah. So exactly.
So what are you doing to get over that or address that challenge?
Well, there's a couple things. We're trying to enhance our data. Our data historically, because the company went through such growth spurts, was kind of unstructured and sort of free text everywhere, where it was very difficult to find. So, we're trying now to come up with a much better way of structuring the data so that these people, it can be so much easier for them to enter some of the nuances and some of the things that they've learned in a structured environment, which makes that asset of data and information much more usable for everyone else, instead of just a plethora of free text that's very tough to find. And we're also just encouraging people to share more so and mentor new people coming in and build it into training so that these people, even if they take it with them and they leave, some of that value is left behind through structured data and training. That would be my answer, unless Charlie has something different.
No, I totally agree. I think people, knowledge, and scale are the key challenges we face.
Okay, so could you tell us now how you were able to get the workforce focused in on the customer's mission? Now, how did you make that happen?
Well, this is going back to what Charlie said earlier about the culture. I'll tell you, Henry, if you have to cut me off, because it's not a real short answer, but
That's okay.
About 7 years ago, we started what we called our cultural evolution. And And to cut to the chase, we started out with myself and others traveling all around the world and visiting our people face to face with a personal message about here's our global strategy on how we have to execute these missions better in order to win in the market through our engaging our hearts and minds, because like I said earlier, our products and services were basically commoditized. Mm-hmm. We have to provide a global network, okay, of engagement and passion for the work we do and the value we provide to our customers and to the passengers. So it started out with strategy, and then it went into our core values and our behaviors as a global community. And it went right into how we broke it down to what we call discretionary effort and from our people. And all that means is they could either look at their watch and say, it's time to go home. I'm not going to make the extra call because I'm just here for a paycheck. Or they could say, I care about my customer's mission. I'm going to make the extra call and make sure that they landed in Dubai and everything went well. And so it goes from high-level strategy right down to every employee's discretionary effort to make it happen.
Okay. All right. So if you distilled all that,
I will add to that, Henry, that once all that process that Ralph described, it's all connected and empowered. We also celebrate a lot of personal stories, and I think we have close to 2,000 employees worldwide, and we pick stories that are meaningful, with our customers' mission and what the discretionary efforts of our people, and how those two connected, and we share the stories across the board. And so we create a little bit of a family celebration and, almost inspiring the rest of the young population to, do the same. And I think that's very, very powerful because it gets into people's hearts and minds very easy.
Yeah, definitely. So
yep.
What would be the moral then of the story that you just told about how you made this happen?
The moral of the story, I guess, that made this happen was you just have to give the employees in a service business especially line of sight to how they contribute to something greater than just their job. And I'll give you a quick example for your listeners. I had an accounts payable person one time challenge me at one of these meetings and said, that's nice for all the people that are on the phone with our customers, but all I do is pay our bills. I have nothing to do with the trip. And I said to her, I said, well, who do you pay? And she says, well, we pay all our suppliers around the world. And I said, well, are those the suppliers that come out and meet the airplane and cater the airplane and fuel the airplane and take our customers to their hotels and meetings? Yes. And what would happen if you didn't pay those suppliers? And the light went off for her. And I see what you're saying. So if you didn't do what you're doing and pay our suppliers, they're not going to show up and take care of our customers. So even an accounts payable, she called herself a clerk, we don't like to use those words, had line of sight to how she contributed to a success of a mission. I think, to me, that's the moral of the story, is everyone has to see a greater contribution than just their job.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's the thing is, everybody contributes, and a lot of times people do not see where they fit into the big picture. And
correct.
And then you get people demoralized. They're just in there for the paycheck. They come in to go to work. They do the minimum necessary, and then they go home. Okay.
Correct.
So when it comes to quality of what you're doing internally, what are some of the common pitfalls or mistakes that people need to keep in mind as they do their day-to-day jobs?
I'll answer first, and Charlie can weigh in from the international side. One of the things our customers tell us all the time that may be a flaw that it is a constant challenge and focus for us is pay attention to the details. They have been very consistent with us over years of customer surveying and being in front of them. It's attention to the details, it's the accuracy of your information, and it's the timeliness of your response that they value way over price. They will pay a premium, and they do, to get those first three right. If those three fall apart and the details aren't met, our information is not accurate, and we don't respond quick enough with their CEOs breathing down their necks about a trip, then our value is pretty much shot, and they'll look for the lowest price.
Yeah.
That would be how I would answer our biggest challenge to quality. Charlie, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think along with that, and one thing that we keep in front of our employees, because of our missions and what we do for our customers is very customized. Like Ralph said, keep the speed of response, set the expectations right. But overall, we keep telling our employees to not make assumptions in what you think you heard or what the change for that mission was. Sometimes they go too fast and they're trying to expedite and they make assumptions. And so not making assumptions is a big item for us, and having that extra call back and maybe reconfirm, is this what you really wanted to do, or am I clear on what you expect out of this so we can execute? Without that, we end up executing things that were not totally clear, and then we end up with the customer in the wrong place or the wrong time. Yeah. So that to me is avoid making assumptions and double check.
Right. It all comes down to getting the requirements correct. Because if you don't do your due diligence and really understand what the customer wants, then you make assumptions, you fill in the gaps to get your job done, and then something goes wrong.
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay, so Ralph, kind of switching gears a little bit here, could you give us your backstory, how you went from a 17-year-old intern to becoming the CEO of your company?
I guess it was certainly a journey, and the journey continues. I started as a high school intern in '77. I actually became CEO in 2007. And it was a love for the weather, growing up in the Northeast, and was a meteorologist for 10 years. And then I went into sales and marketing for the company, was selling weather services throughout the Midwest and building a lot of good relationships with customers. And that's a core value of the organization. It's in our DNA. So the leadership at the time recognized that and asked me to run a sales territory. And I had to move to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania from White Plains, New York. And then eventually I moved to Houston in the early 90s to lead sales and marketing and meteorology. And from there, I then grew up with the new leadership team, which is our primary owner now, who's my age, Greg Evans, and people like Charlie Mularski and others. And so as the old regime that taught us retired and moved on, we moved up with the new owner, who at the time was the CEO. Mm-hmm. He's now our chairman. He decided the CEO role was not for him. And so having spent a lot of time in weather and operations and then sales and marketing and building up a lot of customer relationships and a lot of learning, he appointed me the CEO role in 2007. That's kind of the Cliff Notes version of the journey.
Okay, thank you. So, thinking back your whole life, can you share an experience you had early on that still influences how you approach business today?
Yeah, there was a defining moment way back when I was still in White Plains where I actually had a bad attitude. I was in weather. I was briefing pilots. With the technology that's here today was not there then. I was, they were like a nuisance to me. The phones rang off the hook, and they were just a voice on the phone. Yeah. And my attitude wasn't where it was supposed to be until I met two of our customers one time face to face. and that were flying airplanes all over the world. And I remember the guy's name too. And he said to me, "Oh, Ralph, it's great to meet you. I really appreciate what you do for me. Your information and your weather briefings really help me make operational decisions. And I really appreciate what you do." And I was, a 22-year-old kid at the time. And I was like, wow, I make a difference. And that's what stuck with me and sort of the genesis of where we wanted to take the culture here and why I think employee engagement is so important. And I'll tell you, Henry, I went from a bad attitude, which I tell this story all the time, to I ran back to the office and couldn't wait for the phone to ring. I wanted to pick it up and I wanted to brief those pilots because it just was the aha moment.
Yeah.
That I made a difference,
Yeah, and it's that one-to-one relationship where you actually met somebody face to face. That's enough to change your everything too.
It did. And that, it wasn't just a voice on the phone. It wasn't just a weather briefing. I was helping this guy make operational decisions flying around the world. I was like, wow, this is exciting,
Sure. So Charlie, how about you? What experience did you have early on in your life that influences how you do business today?
To me, I didn't have the same experience Ralph had, but to me, because I've been extremely lucky to be exposed to our international locations and facing the multicultural aspects of people and how they see strategy and business. And I think to me has been the empathy that I have built with our employees and respecting how they see the world from their own eyes, and being able to assemble a common goal across the world by simply being human with them, have a presence where they trust me and trust each other, to the point that I feel myself lucky that my employees are like my family overseas. And I think that is what sticks in my mind, that is important. And it's very similar to what Ralph was talking about, the connection with the customer. Mm-hmm. I enjoy the connection with the people across the world, and they're our family. And once you connect that way, then people will go above and beyond for you and what you ask them to do for our customers, versus, just reporting to a structure and having to deliver a key metric. So to me, it's just people connection and having a trust factor that big that we all feel like family. And I think if you achieve that across the world or across your department, you will have people work and connect to the extra call or the extra night that they have to be up by to finish this, because they feel like it. It's for the family. Sure.
Yeah, and when you think about it, everybody you touch, internally or externally, is your customer. And it's not just
correct.
Bill, but it's everybody you touch. Okay, so let's now talk about, so what does success look like for Universal Weather and Aviation?
Success? Yeah. Well, every day, Henry, when there's a completed mission and the customer's happy, and we hear those stories I mentioned to you about Puerto Rico and Thailand from the humanitarian side, to you guys, made us look good in front of our passengers because everything worked without a hitch throughout all these. To us, of course, financial performance is important, but you know what? We don't measure ourselves by the dollar all the time. We measure ourselves by the satisfaction of the customers, because that's what leads to the dollars. The dollars is an outcome of doing something great. So for us, success is just doing those great things every day and making it happen.
Okay.
That's what drives our success.
Okay. So can you share some measurable outcomes that you've achieved?
In financially or customer satisfaction?
Yeah, it could be anything. Whatever you want to talk about. It could be financial measurable increases, or what you've seen in terms of improving customer satisfaction, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I could tell you that this year the company, and Charlie, feel free to weigh in, is 60 years old. I mean, this company was founded as a private company 60 years ago in 1959. And, you know, we've been through the ebbs and flows of business and market changes and globalization and good economies, bad economies, technology changes, aircraft, and you know, different types of airplanes and everything. And yet, we've come through it all and are still successful and a viable brand with the largest market share in operations. And throughout 60 years, which a lot of companies don't sustain themselves that way. And the other thing I would say too is many of our historical competitors were bought by big public companies. And that puts us now that we used to be kind of the big company, sort of a smaller company compared to Boeing and some of these others out there, but yet we're still able to provide that value to our customers. We have our challenges, no question, but boy, that sustainability over 60 years, I think, is telling.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, and I'll add, Henry, to that. We have, like Ralph said, been through every aspect of the economy and customers and globalization, but we just didn't sit back and waited for things to happen and then we reacted to them. We have been very, very diligent in charging the industry, and I will say that in many aspects we have shaped how this industry works. How the regulators across overseas in multiple countries look at our segment of the aviation market and how they regulate it, how they allow and not allow our missions to happen. We have been, you know, pounding on the regulators in India and in China for decades, for them to look at the value that business aviation brings to the world and to their own countries, and allow them to switch and change and relax some of the strict regulations that were designed for airlines, so business aviation's value can be executed wherever the customers on board these planes go. So I think I'm very proud to say that we have shaped this industry, and I think that's part of the secret of why we have been, alive for 60 years, but not only alive, we're very successful, and we have a lot more years ahead of us. We just did not sit and wait. We charged and shaped the industry. So I think that's a good lesson. You know, industries are evolving all the time, and I think leaders have to see the opportunities, even if they mean or are difficult. Don't be shy and try to tackle them and be patient, but start to build the energy around the change that could enable your customers and even your competitors. Open doors for everyone, so you're not just working for yourself. You work for the industry, and the industry will come back to you.
Yeah, good point.
Sure. All right. So, Ralph, as the CEO, what are your top 3 process or business capability challenges or concerns?
Biggest challenges right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The top 3.
Yeah, is that really going from, one of the biggest for sure is going from a legacy type infrastructure and processes at Universal, the way we grew up over many, many years, to digital and more technology driven. I would say, so going from legacy to digital, I would also say that scaling the business is a challenge for us. We need to reduce our cost to serve for our customers. So we need to scale. And then there's a trend in the market that we clearly see that a lot of these flight departments, they've invested a lot in training and development of their people as well. And due to technology, they can do a lot of what we have done historically in-house. And so, but however, they need tools in order to pull it off. And so we are developing now, we call DIY, do-it-yourself tools. So they can stay in our ecosystem if they want to bring it in-house. And the market is very split right now. So it's going digital, scaling the business, and providing our customers DIY type tools and access to that data we spoke about are my three biggest challenges.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Those are great. Yeah. Very challenging and also exciting to be looking at things like that. So next question is your competition. You said a lot of them have been subsumed by the larger companies. So in your space, how many competitors do you have?
Well, the way it's broken up now, Universal is heavy in the trip support and the logistics space, which we've been talking a lot about. We're also in which Charlie runs, is the Universal Aviation, our international network of FBOs, fixed base operators around the world, where we have our people that actually meet the airplanes. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so that's another part, and then we have the technology development. There's a ton of competition in each of our segments, I can tell you that. Okay. As a matter of fact, we just had a divestiture of one of our businesses, our fuel credit business, because it was so commoditized and working capital intensive, and we just decided to put our time and effort into more value producing services for our customers. But that was a big change for us. And so to kind of answer your question, I mean, there's got to be north of 25 competitors in the trip support space. Okay. And in the UA space that Charlie deals with every day, it varies by airport and country. But there's no monopolies out there, so we have to be better than the other guys.
Okay. So
Charlie, would you add anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's the only thing I will add in the group that you mentioned, 25 for the logistics and the ground handling in local markets. We have also an array of smaller regional competitors that also attract customers because maybe they're closer to their home base. So we are a very strong company with a worldwide footprint, but we also have to go regional and get closer to the customer base as these emerging markets grow and wealth is created. There'll be more planes based in Asia or the Middle East. We have to invest and be there, speaking their language, understanding their needs, and not all from the US. So it's a multi-dimensional matrix of competition and skills and competencies that we have to address.
Okay. All right. So given that complex landscape, what's the most important question your customers should be asking when they consider using your products and services?
Well, I can tell you what they do ask, from just being out there in the trenches, and they just want to know that we're going to be much more than a vendor. I mean, we really have to partner with them. We use that word and we don't just throw it around. You have to earn that partnership with them, and it comes through trust and team building and being bold and saying to them that the customer is not always right. It may sell books at Barnes and Noble, but in the real world, the customer is not always right, and we have to be vulnerable and open and transparent with each other, because it really comes down to the skills and the experiences of our customers, our employees, and our supply base. That's where it all intersects at one common goal, and that's the success of the mission. Mm-hmm. So you know what I mean? So yeah. You have to galvanize the supply base, the customers, and Universal into one common goal. Mm-hmm. And it's that level of the relationship that they expect.
Okay. All right. So here's a tough question. Now, you've been involved with Universal now for 37 years. So if you had to start Universal all over from scratch today, what behaviors would you keep and what would you do differently?
Okay. I think the behaviors I would keep for sure is the commitment to the customer that was just built in me from the old regime right on through our current leadership. I would never change the commitment to the customer and the employee engagement and all the things Charlie and I discussed with you. Mm-hmm. the thing I would change that is even a challenge for our culture today is focus. You know, there's so much coming at us, and we try to do too many things. And, you know, so Charlie and I kind of chuckle. We're very good at accomplishing 30% of 100 things, but not too many 100%. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the big behavior I would like to see changed here, and I'm trying, is focus on the 2 or 3 critical initiatives that we need to win in order to sustain the company for another 60 years.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's wonderful. So we could just keep talking, but we're rapidly running out of time here, and I want to be respectful of both you and Charlie's time here so we don't overextend it. So how can people get in touch with you, Ralph, if they want to learn more?
They could. The best way for me is email. You know, and do you want the address? Yes. Or do you have it?
No, just you can say it here so people can hear it as well.
Oh, sure. It's R Vasami, like my last name, VASAMI, at univ-wea.com.
Okay. Wonderful.
So that's the email, and I'll be happy to answer any questions any of the listeners have.
Okay, wonderful. So it's been great talking with both of you. Some very fantastic stories, very interesting. And I really enjoy your advice about the success of the customer mission, the customer focus. That's paramount. And a lot of companies don't get that. So I'm sure the viewers will find this very helpful. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Henry. And thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Henry. Thanks, Ralph.